that meet in Carrollwood. Jim is married to his college sweetheart, Tina, 47 years this November. Wow. Jim worked for United Way at 110 Wall Street on September 11, 2001. Jim first delivered a longer version of this speech at the West Pasco Aging Network on September 11, 2013. Jim credits his Toastmasters experience and practice session with Suncoast Toastmasters the night before with the confidence to talk about the lessons that he learned during that tragic event 15 years ago this month. Please welcome Jim as he introduces us to the man in the red bandana, a good Samaritan from modern times. His speech is 8 to 9 minutes long. Jim.
I can't remember if I cried when I read about his widowed bride, but something touched me deep inside the day the music died. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests, and perhaps soon-to-be Toastmasters. When has the music died in your life? Was there an event? Was there a person who helped you to find joy again? The music died, the first time I heard that analogy of the music dying was February 3rd, 1959. For it was the next day that Don McLean, the author of American Pie, was reading, as he was folding his newspapers to deliver that afternoon, he read about the death of the only person he'd ever idolized, Buddy Holly, legend of rock and roll music. For the night before, in an Iowa field, in a blazing snowstorm, in a Beechcraft plane, died Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, Richie Valens, and a 21-year-old pilot, Roger Peterson. And when people look back on that event, rock and roll was a new genre, and a lot of people thought that we had lost the real pride and joy of the rock and roll music, and that maybe we would never pick it up again. 15 years ago this month, much larger planes, 4 of them, crashed into the Pentagon, into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, into the World Trade Center that I saw being built when I worked for the telephone company when I was in college. And those were not accidents. There was 2,977 innocent people from 70 countries died that day. And I worked on Wall Street when the towers were hit, and I heard that first tower get hit, and I saw it come down. And when I look back on that event, when we got back in the office after several weeks of being displaced, I will always remember the voicemail message my cousin Flo left. Are you okay? Or did you go to help someone? And I had been an emergency medical technician for 17 years in my volunteer ambulance corps, and I momentarily did think, well, maybe I could help someone, but my EMT certification had expired. I saw Ladder 10 and Engine 4 pull out from the firehouse on the corner of Wall Street, 15 firefighters, never to return, who died in the tower that day. And what we decided to do, you could actually see all the debris blowing from the World Trade Center, which is about 1.5 miles from where our offices were on the East River. Nobody had to tell us it's time to get out. But my coworker, Jennifer McFadden, and I decided to leave. And the subways were shut down, so what we decided to do was to walk to Penn Station, where the Long Island Railroad was. We had only gone about 3 or 4 blocks to Fulton Street when we heard this tremendous roar. It sounded like another plane coming in. What I'll always remember is people scrambling in all directions, and Jennifer and I just standing still, wondering what's the right direction to run. It wasn't a third plane. It was actually the South Tower coming down. Beautiful, beautiful blue day. How many have ever been to the 9/11 Museum? Okay, 1 or 2 people. You've got to go if you're ever in New York, and you've got to go. And you have to see the wall, and the wall is a blue picture of what the sky was that day. And when we heard a plane had hit the North Tower, American Airlines Flight 11, myself and my coworkers just thought, oh geez, it must have been a tourist plane, that maybe the guy had a heart attack or something like that. And we were going downstairs to go next door to 120 Wall Street, where our main offices were, when we heard this tremendous explosion. And what it was actually United Airlines Flight 175 hitting the South Tower. And so Jennifer and I said, you know, we got to get out of here. So we started to walk. As I said, by the time we got to Fulton Street, the first tower had come down, the South Tower, which was the second tower to be hit at 9:02. And by the time we got to 14th Street, on our way to 33rd Street, the North Tower had come down at 10:29. And I'll always remember encountering somebody, a gentleman, covered with dust. And we asked, well, what happened? He said, I was coming down from the 23rd floor, and I saw the cracks beginning to form in the stairwell. I'm very lucky to be alive. And as Jennifer and I walked over the 59th Street Bridge, with all hordes of people, there were hardly any cars at all. The bridge was a conduit for people walking sometimes 15 or 20 miles to get home. And Jennifer and I just stopped, and we looked to our right, and all we could see were these plumes of smoke coming from where the grandest edifices had ever stood. And when you try to make sense out of a tragedy like that, when you try to hear the music again, I think sometimes symbols are a way to help us. For some people, it's the crushed fire helmet of 343 firefighters, also 60 police officers who died that day, the rescuers. For others, and you've seen the pictures, it could be the steel beams in the shape of a cross. For me, it's a man with a red bandana, because from his grave, a 23-year-old equities trader asks, what would you do if you had 1 hour to live? That's Wells Crowther. Wells Crowther was that Good Samaritan. He was, in effect, the 344th firefighter that day. And what happened is he worked on the 78th floor. He was an equities trader for Sandler and O'Neill. On the 104th floor he worked. And he was coming down the South Tower to actually see if people needed help in the North Tower, which had been struck, when that second plane hit there. And there was people strewn all over the 78th floor lobby. That's a sky lobby where the elevators switched to the other elevators that would go down to the base of the World Trade Center. And he said that people said there was loads of people dead. This one woman, Lynn Young, had her glasses broken. She had blood on her glasses. And what she said is there was a man that came and said, I know a way out. And he was responsible for saving at least 5 people's lives that day, possibly as many as 12 people. He led that first group down the stairs to the 40th floor where firefighters were, where the air was better, and where the elevator was actually working. And just like those 343 other firefighters, he went up when everyone else was trying to come down. And Judy Ween described later that evening to her husband, she said, a man came out of nowhere, and he said, if you can stand up now. If you can help someone, help them now. These are all wonderful stories, a wonderful portrayal of Wells Crowther, and to his parents, he was an only child, it brought great comfort. But they never knew until March 19th of 2002 what had happened to Wells. 40% of the people who lost loved ones in the World Trade Center don't even have an ounce of dust of them. There is no remains. But on March 19th, his body was discovered in the South Tower, where the command station was for the New York City Fire Department. That brought a certain degree of comfort to his parents. They were able to at least bury a body. But it wasn't until May 26th that the New York Times had an article about the man in the red bandana. Jefferson described his son Wells as his best friend. And what he said was, what the article said, were these 2 women, Judy Ween and Lynn Young, described a man in a red bandana who took charge and told people what to do, follow my directions, and he saved their lives. And how did he become the man in the red bandana? Well, when he was 6 years old, his father, Jefferson, who was also a volunteer with the Nyack Fire Department, said to him, as he gave him this special handkerchief, he said, this is for shell, and this is for blow. And everywhere that young man went for the next 23 years of his life, he had the red bandana. Whether it was playing lacrosse at Boston College, whether it was volunteering with the Nyack Hook and Ladder Fire Department, that was how he made a difference, and that was how he identified himself. He was a true leader at Boston College. Judy Ween said that a person can live 100 years and not show the compassion or the wherewithal that he showed that day. His father Jefferson said, knowing that what he did in those hours, in that last hour of his life, was as if he took his equities trader hat off and put his firefighter helmet on. Now, every fall at Boston College, there's the Red Bandana Run. And the last photo that the volunteers see when they pull out of the Nyack Hook and Ladder Company is Wells Crowther's photo. His father, describing his son and this experience and this enlightenment, said that, he said that Wells was never going to become a CEO. He was never going to do good works. He was never going to endow a museum. But what he did that day, that's his legacy. So when I try to think of meaning of 9/11, and when I had the opportunity, because of Toastmasters, to share with the West Pasco Aging Network on the day, September 11th, 2013, I was able to share with them how he's enlightened my life, how he's brought some sense out of the tragedy. And a lot of people think that 9/11 ought to be a day, a national holiday. It should be a day of doing good works. Well, if you've never heard about the man in the red bandana, there's a documentary that's coming out. There was a film. I actually went to the 9/11 museum, and because I'm involved in Reading Pals, teaching kids all different kinds of ways to improve their reading, I actually found a type of comic book about Wells Crowther. You know, we never know if we'll be a hero in a time of crisis, but sometimes our greatest instincts come into play, and our heart goes out to help somebody. So I think there's 4 lessons that we can learn from 9/11. One is a greater appreciation for freedom. Another one, heartbreak is real. Evil is real. There is no cure for heartbreak. Evil is real, but so is courage. And the time to say I love you is now. Thank you.